But it's a misconception that it's a choice and you can quit anytime. Yeah, I might have chose to try something, but then that addiction and dependency kicks in and you use to live and live to use, but there's hope. If you got a heartbeat, you got hope.
Hi, welcome to an episode of the Behind the Spotlight. Today we're featuring Tim Ryan. He's done some wonderful work in the space of being an interventionist and in the recovery field. And we will highlight him today, and he can tell us how he's helped people turn their pain into purpose. Let's welcome Tim. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Good, Cal. How are you? Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I'm doing quite well. I'm excited for you to be here and to see where this conversation takes us. Yes, so for us to get started, I have a nice little question I'd like to start with for you today. Before we get into your work, can you share a moment in your life that completely changed the way you see the world?
Oh, boy, that is really a good question. Something in my life that made me completely change and see the world. I would probably say going to prison. That really opened my eyes. I actually went twice. The first time was for driving on revokes. They gave me a year and you do 61 days and they release you. But unfortunately, the second time they gave me 7 years and I did 13 and a half months. But that's definitely a reality check and a wake up call for a different few reasons. At 44 years old, how did I get here? Me of all people. What am I doing in prison again? And I was in a therapeutic community in prison. It was still a medium prison. And believe me, I was a minority, but some of these people I judged walking in became some of my strongest rocks, my mentors, and my friends to this day. So that was probably my biggest awakening.
So could you tell us a little bit about your personal story and kind of what was the thing that led you into this line of work?
Well, getting sober. I'll be 57 this week and coming up on 13 years clean and sober. And that's 100%. I don't smoke weed. I don't do a pill occasionally. November 1st of 2012, I got sober and I was in the Illinois Department of Corrections. And, I was a guy that grew up in Northern Illinois on a lake. We're all adopted. My older brother's 2 years older than me. My little brother and sister are three-quarter Chippewa Indian, Native American. So I grew up with a lot of racism just because of my brother and sister's skin color. And I learned to protect them with my mouth and fist. And, I struggled with learning disabilities, dyslexia, and all that. And all I cared about was being on the lake, whether I was fishing, sailing, canoeing, water skiing, ice skating in the winter. And at 14, I started drinking. At 15, I started experimenting with cocaine. At 21, I checked myself into a treatment center at 21 years old, 1990, January. And from walking out of there in February of 1990 until November 1st of 2012, I would bounce in and out of the rooms of 12-step based programs. I'd go for 3 months. I'd go for 6, shut my wife up, shut the boss up, dust off. And ultimately, I got my third aggravated DUI, December 16th of 2010, I drove one more time. I was drunk. I was on heroin. I overdosed while driving. I hit 2 cars and I put 4 people in the hospital. One was a 9-month-old baby. And I could have killed all of them. And thank God they were all okay. But I was dead on the scene because I had overdosed for the 8th, 9th time, whatever it was. And I fought that case for 21 months. On October 30th of 2012, Judge Wattis at 26 in California and Chicago sentenced me to 7 years in prison. I used November 1st as my sobriety date because I was so high on heroin going into prison. I don't use that day. I use it a couple days later. But that's where my journey into recovery truly started.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being so open about your past and your struggles with drinking and addiction. Was there a defining moment that made you want to dedicate your life to helping others in recovery?
That's a great question. That is a great question. And, even when I was struggling, my youngest son was struggling. So I do everything I could to get him into treatment and help him. But why I didn't do it for myself, I don't know. But when I got to Sheridan Prison in Illinois, you do 30 days in SEG, you do 30 days in the orientation hall, and you want to get into the one of the little buildings in back. And I got into one. And I walk into my cell, and there's this big black guy, 400 pounds, all muscle, sitting on the bunk reading an AA big book. So I kind of walked in, and I said, "Hey, man, what's up?" And he looks at me like I bothered him. And he looks up, he goes, "Hey, Whitey, you into recovery?" I said, "Yeah, man, I'm into recovery." He said, "Because if you're not coming in this cell." And he used some derogatory words, which I won't use today. And I said, "Hey, man, I'm into recovery." He said, "Hey, I'm Big Perk. Nice to meet you." He said, "Hey, Big Perk." I said, "I'm Tim." And he goes, "Tim, I think I'm going to call you Powder." I said, "You can call me whatever you want." Well, Big Perk was a gang chief with the conservative vice lords for 30 years on the west side of Chicago. He had spent 23 years of his life in prison. And prior to me walking into that cell, he had done 4 years at another prison and got transferred to Sheridan because it had a therapeutic community. And James Perkins and myself never got a TV. I wasn't in prison to do push-ups and noodles and get, so I was there to change. And we read about 300 to 400 books. We went through the 12 steps a few times. We wrote 2 business plans. One was called Hansen, Help a Negative Situation End Nonviolently. We wanted to go after the inner city kids that were tied to the gangs, the guns, the drugs. And then we wrote another one for a Man in Recovery Foundation. My motto was, I take people from dope to hope, help one addict at a time. And I knew in prison, once the veil of addiction had cleared and I wasn't dope sick, and I knew I wanted to help people. I knew this was my mission. And I spent 13 and a half months in prison, and my wife divorced me, lost our home in foreclosure. I displaced my 4 kids. I had to move into my ex-wife's mother-in-law's, or my former mother-in-law's. And I walked out for the first time in my life, 13 and a half months clean and sober, with a plan and a mission. And my mom had set up a little townhouse so I could walk to the train and walk downtown Naperville and go to the Alano Club for meetings. And I walked up and I set up a nonprofit, and I started a bunch of support groups where I had the parents or loved one come with the person struggling, because if it's a family disease, let's treat it like one. And then tragedy struck on my 21-month sobriety date. I was about 8 months out of prison, and my 20-year-old son died from an accidental overdose on my 21-month sobriety date. And I don't have the necklace on, but I carry a necklace with a cross, and I carry Nick's ashes in there, and I try to live God's will and Nick's will to the best of my ability. And I went to a 12-step base meeting that night and never looked back. Unfortunately, in my son's passing, he kind of opened the doors for what I do, because the next day I'm on the front page of the Herald and the Sun-Times, anti-heroin crusader loses son to overdose. But I had already had my nonprofit set up, and I was already helping people, but it pushed me to dig deeper and to help more. And that's how the journey started.
Nice, nice. Tell me how that personal tragedy allowed you to connect more with addicts and their families when you were.
Oh, that's a great question. You got some good questions. First off, I knew I was a recruiter prior in my addiction years. So I've interviewed tens of thousands of people. I can read people in a minute. And I applied those tools into my recovery. And I truthfully, when I started my nonprofit, I assessed 60 other nonprofits, and I said, nobody's actually helping the addict and the alcoholic that does. Hey, if you got commercial insurance, you can get help. If you've got cash, you can get help. If you got state insurance, it's harder to get help. And if you don't have any insurance, you're dead in the water. So I scoured the country, and I found long-term peer-driven programs and faith-based programs. So if somebody called Tim Ryan, I could help everyone. And I don't care where you live in the country, and I might need to send you to Colorado for a year or this place for 6 months, but are people willing to change? And that's the whole thing. And I took my trials and tribulations and turned them into pain. I took my pain and turned it into purpose. Simple as that. And I never look back. But the most important thing in my life is my relationship with my God and my recovery, then my family, then my work. If I go trying to put work in front of everything, it's all going to fall apart. You know, I'm up at 5 a.m, I sit outside, I pray, I meditate, I do a gratitude list, I read my daily reflections, Jesus Calling, 24-hour day book. I hop on a 6 a.m. 12-step based meeting, then I get my day going. Recovery comes first, because without recovery, I'm no help to anybody.
100%. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I have a super, super tight morning routine like that. I do some reading, I do a 10th step, get my fears and resentments out of my head onto the paper, I say it, and into God's hands, praying, doing some praying. I read a page or two out of the big book, usually upon awakening, and do a meditation. I'll read a little bit out the Bible. And it's crazy because sometimes I'm done my morning routine and I feel like I'm in the club high on ecstasy.
Yep, yep.
And like it's some mornings like where it's just I won't miss it for the world because like they saying, I'm not gonna start quoting the big book, but the big book says men and women drink essentially for the effect produced. I do that morning routine and I won't miss it, essentially for the effects that it produces.
Absolutely. I can honestly tell people, I mean, I got married almost 6 years ago to my wife now, Jenny, and she's almost 20 years sober. We work together, we travel together, we live together. We've now taken temporary full-time custody of my 10-year-old daughter. She's out here going to school in LA. Jenny's stepped up to be a full-time mom. My life is so full, but 99% of the people we roll with, they're all sober. They're all sober. I'm going to a buddy's house tonight who had knee surgery yesterday, and we're bringing a 12-step meeting to his house. Then I'm coming. I had another buddy from Vegas come in. We're meeting for ice cream tonight. These are all sober people. That's what I get to do. And my world is so full. I don't have time for soul suckers. I don't have time for negativity. I want to be around people that fuel my soul. If you're feeding it, you're good. If you're stealing my energy, I want nothing to do with you.
Yes. Talk about that. The importance of changing your playgrounds per se.
Man, you got to change people, places, and things. It's like working in the treatment industry. I've been in the treatment business, I don't know, 11 years now. And I see so many people, I'm going to go for 3-4 weeks and I'll be good to go. I'm like, yeah, but you've been drinking and using drugs for 32 years. Do you really think a 28-day, say 30 days, it's going to take you 2 weeks to truly detox and start feeling better? It's going to take you another week to start eating and getting some nutrients. Then you're kicked out the door. Well, let's get you set up to sober living. Maybe you need a sober coach or a sober companion. Let's get you plugged into recovery. And when I walked out of treatment in 1990, they said, go to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps. So I'd go to the Crystal Lake Illinois Club in Crystal Lake, Illinois. I'm 21 years old. And I'd put my hand up. I'm looking for a sponsor. Nobody would call on me. I'd be like, yes, I got away with it again. See, I'm the guy that thought I could get sober through osmosis. Nobody sat me down and said, Tim, this is why you have a sponsor. Going to meetings is just fellowshipping. Hey, I get to see my friends and here's some people share. We're doing a discussion on something. But the real work and the change happens when I am working with another human being, taking them through the 12 steps, and then they're taking other people. You got to give it away to keep it. And it's such a simple concept, but we confuse it. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. I'm working with a woman and she's kind of saying like, well, when are we gonna I want to get through it fast. I want to do it fast. And I was like, no, it's nothing fast. We just work at this pace. We read the book together. It's the slow sobriety people talk about, and it's so simple. She's like, but that's it. That's all we got to do today is just read this and talk about each line. Yeah, I tell the girls, we're gonna go through the book the same way I did my coat, line by line. They want to complicate it, but it's a really simple program.
The problem is what I've seen, most people don't listen. And I'll tell you, when I When I met Jenny, I wanted to partner with my wife. She was a supermodel and an actress, and then she got sober and did shows like Sober House and Celebrity Rehab and Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And she was making things happen. So I reached out to her wanting to partner up speaking, doing interventions, maybe open a treatment center. And 6 weeks later, when I flew to Florida to meet her, man, 4 hours after meeting her, I told her I'm going to marry you and spend the rest of my life with you. And she's like, hold on, maybe you want to finish that second divorce. I said, they'll be done in 5 weeks. Maybe you want to go play the field. I said, I don't operate that way. I know what I want, and I want you. And I was divorced 4 or 5 weeks later. We were engaged 4 months later and got married that year and never looked back. But I today get to do life clean and sober with my best friend in the world, my wife. And I want people to understand out there, I didn't know what true love was until Jenny walked into my life. I'd been married twice before because I got ladies pregnant. I mean, my first wife I was with 16 years and we had 4 kids. One of them I adopted, but I was intoxicated the entire marriage. And that going to prison gave me time to sit back and reflect, and then getting out, my son dying and doing all this and speaking events. And I was a guest of the 2016 State of the Union. I wrote a book called From Dope to Hope. I published that in 2017. I had a documentary in my life on A&E in 2017 called Dope Man. And hell, 2018, I was wrote up in Real Leaders magazine as one of the top 100 visionary thought leaders in the world. And I'm in there with Bill and Melinda Gates, Elon Musk, Mikhail Gorbachev, and old R68915 ex-con Tim Ryan. And the reason I say that is, yeah, it's cool little accolades, but it also gave me a platform to carry the message of recovery. And, you know, my wife and I and 2 of our sober friends were in the prison I was an inmate at last year for 2 days, and we spoke to 2,500 inmates, about 300 at a time. And I gave my phone number out to I tell the whole group, here, you want to call me? Here's my cell number. And I talked to about 10 of those guys a week. One just got out of prison 3 months ago. We got him set up with clothes and money and a cell phone. He's in a sober living. He's working now. I'm the real deal here. I don't just talk, oh, you live in Hollywood and Beverly Hills. I'm the guy that's in the trenches. I live in the darkness, but I help people shine that light and give them the light so they can go succeed in life.
Nice. Beautiful, beautiful. Because, like we say, you only keep what you have by giving it away.
Yep.
No. So, what do you think people misunderstand most about addiction?
That it's a choice, that it's you can just quit. And, you know, I had met 2 years out of prison. Do you know who Dr. Gabor Mate is?
No, tell me.
Google Gabor Mate, M-A-T-E. Dr. Mate's out of Vancouver, British Columbia, and he's been working with billionaires to homeless people for 40 years. And he's a trauma expert. And what he said, there's 300 people at this conference, and it's a addiction, all clinicians, nurses, doctors. And he said, how many people are in the audience are adopted? And about 30 of us put up our hands. He said, do you realize you're 48,000 times more susceptible to become an alcoholic or a drug addict due to the abandonment issues? And his whole thing is, and whether it's a chicken or the egg, it's a choice. It's a disease. His whole thing is it all has to do with underlying trauma. It all has to do with childhood trauma, emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, or sexual. We don't have the coping skills. Alcohol, drugs come in. If you got that dependent, I got buddies I snorted cocaine with. They tried it once, said I'll never do it again. I liked it. First time I snorted cocaine, I was getting it fronted to me 2 hours later. I mean, that's just how I fell in love with it. My wife fell in love with it. But it's a misconception that it's a choice and you can quit anytime. Yeah, I might have chose to try something, but then that addiction and dependency kicks in and you use to live and live to use, but there's hope. If you got a heartbeat, you got hope. I have worked with the worst of the worst if they said they would never get sober and they're thriving in life right now. And I've also worked with the so-called best of the best, got all the money, all the resources, are deader than a doornail because they wouldn't take the suggestions. Mm-hmm. And everybody wants a quick fix. Well, I want to get sober. I got to get back to my life. I got to get back. No, you don't. Like my wife, When Jenny got sober, you're talking a lady that speaks 4 languages, top of her game, red carpets, all these blockbuster movies, and she couldn't stay sober. She hung herself in the psych ward, had to learn how to walk, talk, wheelchair walker, walk her to a cane. And her sponsor got her sober in Compton in the friggin' hood. And they'd be like, oh, look what the little princess has to say. Listen, shut your mouth, sit down, shadow your sponsor. And that's what my wife needed. And then 2.5 years later, Drew called her and said, hey, I want you to run this house, sober house. And, you know, he was her doctor in treatment. And he declared her dead 3 times and said, your daughter's, called my mother-in-law, said, your daughter's one of these hopeless cases. We're going to go through the motions, but I don't know if she'll make it. And she did. And everybody said Jenny Jimenez is not going to make it. And now, January, she'll have 20 years clean and sober. We live a beautiful life today. So don't judge people. Anybody, I've worked with billionaires, doctors, lawyers, cops, teachers, average day people. The youngest heroin addict I've worked with is 12 years old. The oldest is 78. This doesn't discriminate. I went and met with a 70-year-old gentleman on Saturday, who is now completely schizophrenic because he was a closet homosexual and went and hooked up with a guy, and the guy drugged him. And the guy's got some serious issues now. And I had asked him, I said, was this because you were a gay man? He said, yeah, I was afraid to come out. I said, dude, you live in California. You live in Santa Monica. Nobody cares if you're gay. Nobody. And he goes, yeah, I'm starting to figure that out now. But it's those insecurities in this chicken or the egg, choice or not, it doesn't matter. But the point I have is anybody can get sober, but anybody can die real quick, because what they've got out there now, I'm seeing people getting picked off left and right because it's all got fentanyl in it.
Yes, yes. My two best friends both died of a fentanyl overdose.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and it was the thing that really made me wake up and open my eyes and really get serious, to take this thing serious and really dig deep into AA and getting sober.
Well, you know, Kel, I can't tell you how many people I've seen get 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, and they go out one time and they buy one Xanax or one Percocet or one snort of cocaine. If it's got a grain of fentanyl, you're dead. There's no coming back. And even when my son died, fentanyl was starting to come in, but he had snorted 2 bags of heroin, and his buddy gave him a Xanax bar, and he ate it. And a half hour later, he was overdosing, and the kids panicked and put him on the sofa and went in the basement, and came up an hour later, and he was dead. If they would have called 911, he'd be alive. If they would have had Narcan, he'd be alive. But a lot of people don't understand. You mix an opiate with the benzodiazepine, or you mix an opiate with alcohol, it suppresses your system. It slows down, you stop breathing, and you choke on your own vomit and die. And that all started from the 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 17-year-old just wanting to fit in, just having a drink to be part of the people. Or I'm going to smoke some weed. I know I don't want to, but I want to fit in with the older kids because that's what I did. And that's how my journey started. I wasn't comfortable in my own skin, and I didn't have an outlet to talk about it with anybody.
Yes, yes. I totally agree. I totally agree. So you just spoke a little bit about the relapse that comes with some people in this recovery process. How do you help the people you work with keep hope alive when a setback like that happens, they have a relapse?
Well, you know, it's funny you say that because I've got a guy I'm working with right now I've known for years. He's went through the steps 5 times, and he's been in treatment 4 times in the past 4 or 5 years. And he's got some mental health. So 2 weeks ago, he called me and said, you know, I'm thinking of jumping off a building. I said, well, let me get my video camera so I can videotape it. And he laughed. So I knew I had him there. And we talked, and I got him to go in and get stable on his meds, and he's out. And he's like, we got to get into the steps. I said, that's the last thing we need to do. I said, you need to get stable on your friggin' meds right now. My most important thing is getting you dialed in with the therapist you're seeing at least 2 or 3 times a week. Go and do at least 2 meetings a day, and let's get you healthy for the next 30 to 60 days. You've already went through the steps 5 times in 4 years, and you can't stay sober. So it's more than the steps. And that's what a lot of people miss, because you have the alcoholism addiction. Then you have the mental health, which could be anxiety, panic, depression. It could get into the bipolars, the schizophrenia. That needs to be worked with. But what a lot of people don't work with, Cal, is the underlying trauma. And they all need to be addressed. And I looked at my life and said, I used to joke around how a relapse is part of recovery. And because that was my hall pass to go use again, because I wasn't ready. And if I look, they're like, you've been around since 1990. No, I truly didn't get into recovery until I went to prison. And I started actually doing the work. And I got humble, and I did an honest 4th step and an honest 5th step. And I shared all my fucking secrets. That's when the miracles started to happen, Kellen. That's what a lot of people miss. They want to rush through this. They don't want to be honest. And what I'm seeing more and more now is a lot more people also need a therapist outside of a sponsor, because they don't want to work through the causes and conditions of what's causing their trauma or their anxiety. And it could be the littlest thing, but a lot of people too, I have them get full blood workups and DNA scans so we can find out what's really going on inside. Because once we take away the booze and drugs, we got to get you centered on the 9 dimensions of wellness: emotional, spiritual, physical, occupational, social, mental, blah, blah, blah. So I do whatever I can to make sure people have the tools to set them up to succeed. Whether you need to hop on a Zoom 12-step based meeting, they're all over the place. Getting people connected with the right mentor sponsor is key, because some people gravitate towards someone because they think they're cool. I could care less about that. Like my sponsor now, he's a huge musician, been a musician 30 years, runs a record label, really successful, 37 years sober. And I didn't know who he was when I met him almost 5 years ago. And I just went up. I said, hey, I moved to LA a few years ago. COVID hit. I'm stagnant. I'm looking for a sponsor out here. And we started talking. Now, when I met with him and he agreed to sponsor me, he said, when's the last time you went through the steps? I said, it's been a while. I said, well, we go through those at least once a year. So you're going to go through the steps again. I'm going through them again right now. I'm having another buddy take me through them because I've done it 3 times with my sponsor in the past 3 years. He said, how many commitments at meetings do you have as a greeter, chair? And I said, none. He said, good. You're going to have 3 by the end of the week. He said, how many people are you sponsoring? I said, 1. He said, good. Get 4 more. He says, you do a gratitude list? I said, no, what's that? And he said, you write down what you're grateful for. He said, start sharing it with your sober buddies. I share my gratitude list with about 200 people every morning. It takes me 45 minutes to send out. And he said, you'll be at my house every Thursday night for our home group. You'll be at Bread and Roses, a men's stag meeting every Saturday. He goes, you will only attend men's stag meetings unless you're with your wife or you're speaking, because you're a married man and you have no business being at co-ed meetings. And he said, if you want what I have, you do what I do. You go one day without calling me, find a new sponsor. And that's how I roll. And that's how I operate at 56 years old. I need to stay in the center of this because I see how quick people can get picked off.
Exactly. A friend of mine's that has like 17 or 18 years. I see him frequently at a lot of different Zooms. He has like 2 Zooms he does religiously that he runs every Sunday, and nobody knows where he is. Right? It's just that easy. And like you say, you gotta stay in the middle of this thing. It's like they say, it's such a cunning and baffling and powerful disease, where it's like someone with 18 years now and he's disappeared. And I just pray and hope that he's okay and that he comes back,
Well, Kelly, you bring up a really good point. Because my line is twisted. I'm an interventionist. So I'm the guy, I've been into trap houses, hunting people down the streets of San Francisco. I don't care. I've been shot at. I've had a guy try to stab me. But when it comes to me sponsoring people, if they go out, I'll reach out. But my sponsor says, Tim, you're a lighthouse. We attract people to us. We don't go into burning buildings. We don't run into burning cars to rescue people, because then you start enabling them. And if you let them go. If they want the help, they'll come back. And I had a hard time with that, because I'm a people pleaser and I want to help and help. But what happens if you get involved too much in someone's chaos? They start harvesting your energy and they become a soul sucker and you start losing track of what you're doing. So it happens a lot. And I've got 5 of my buddies from the Zoom meeting sitting in treatment right now because they know I'm the guy that can help them, and that's what I do. So I can't believe they pay me to do this shit. But I like speaking, I like doing interventions, I like coaching people, and even doing sober transports is awesome because I'm taking that person in a desperate situation, getting them into a program, and I'm usually picking them up once they graduate the program and escorting them back, and they're a totally different person. And that's what's really cool. Then you see that spark, and now you can just start guiding people and do this meeting, check these 3 guys for a sponsor, and next thing the miracles are happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you'll find people who just have this like zest for the program and being sober and doing what we do. And then you'll find other people and you can tell it's like a chore and they're just doing it because someone told them to do or they feel like they need to at the time. And it's always amazing to me. I always say I'm so lucky I'm on that side that I love doing this. I love doing this. And it's like this treasure I found. So all I do is want to give it to someone else, you know?
That's it. And, I guess the hard thing is, too, I work with a lot of people. And I've seen people get from smoking meth, banging heroin, drinking like a fish, hookers, prostitutes, gambling, to getting sober, and then they die from a heart attack, or then they die from a brain aneurysm from the secondary in their health. So, when we start getting people sober, man, first thing I'm jumping on is let's get you to see the nutritionist, a personal trainer. Let's get all your blood work, and let's make sure we got you staying healthy because now you quit the hardest stuff and we got to pull you back together. But a lot of people want a quick fix, Cal. They want to be at the end of the rainbow without adding any color.
Mhm, mhm. What about every family who feels like they've tried everything and are out of options? What would you say to them?
They haven't called me. That's the truth. I'm the guy that gets called to clean up the messes. We've used 2 interventionists. I can't get through to my son. Whatever. I flew to Virginia a couple months ago, and one of my sponsees is an advanced nurse practitioner out there. I got sponsees all over the country. And he called me about his 14-year-old nephew. And I flew out there and did intervention with this kid. I couldn't believe the shit he was doing. He's got a great family and all this. And I put him in an adolescent program in West Palm Beach, Florida. And man, the kid's thriving down there. I just got wind from the parents. He's coming back. He's going to this specialty school. He's doing a PHP IOP. They got a sober coach for him there. I'm like, this is what it's all about. Because I could see that 14-year-old throw his entire life away in 2 years. And what these kids, for the parents that are listening to this, that you think it's okay for your kid to smoke pot because you did 30 years ago, you're a friggin' idiot. This weed today is not the weed I grew up smoking 30 years ago. The THC potency is 50% higher, and it's putting these kids in psychotic breaks that they're not coming out of, that are on psychiatric meds the rest of their life. I've got one who has a full-time caregiver, and this is just from smoking weed. It's heart-wrenching. And I'm coaching a kid out of Utah right now, 17 years old. In every consequence, why my dad's not letting me use the car. It smelled like pot. And I explained to this kid, I said, do you understand every bit of trouble you've had is because of weed? I said, what is so wrong with you that you've got to get high to go fishing? You've got to get high to go snowboarding. You've got to get high to get out of bed. And he goes, Tim, I never looked at it that way. And I said, you're smoking. What are you missing? I said, just quit for a day and let's see how you feel. And so I work differently with different people, but I'm real talk. I don't candy coat anything. This shit's life and death here. And sometimes parents don't want to hear the truth because sometimes parents are the enablers and the parents are part of the problem. And they need to hear that. Or you got one and a lot of kids only got one parent and that parent's struggling. So to answer your question, don't ever give up. Don't ever, ever give up. Now, that doesn't mean you might not need to kick them out of the house, because sometimes they need to go. What are you doing 35 years old living at your parents' drinking high every day? You don't pay rent. You don't work. Get your ass out. You can go to treatment. You can go into a homeless shelter, or you can go get sober, and I'll put you into a sober living. Now you got choices. So that's a choice on what you want to do. And eventually people get sick and tired of the pain and they put their hand up. And when they put their hand up, you better be ready to strike quickly, because they're going to change their mind within 12 to 48 hours. It's a dance dealing with people. And you've got all these especially doing interventions, you've got so many moving pieces. But when I get them into that center and they're doing well, I've done my job.
Can you share one story of a transformation that still gives you chills when you think about it today?
Yep. Becky. I had a documentary it was supposed to go to series. The show was called Dope Man. I think you can Google it and find it on Amazon. They'll charge you $6. It's one episode, because they changed it to a documentary. And 3 weeks prior to us filming, this mom from Rockford, Illinois called me and said her daughter had been sex trafficked since she was 12 years old. And I drove out there and got her away from the hotel, and I brought her 100 miles away, and I put her into a detox. Well, about 3 days in, she walked out. And I just happened to have the film crew with me, and her mom calls and says, Tim, Becky's at this hotel in Naperville, Illinois. So I went to one, didn't find her, and I see her pimp driving with her. So I'm honking, I'm yelling, screaming. Long story short, they pull into the hotel, and Becky looks like a friggin' train wreck. She comes up to the car. What are you doing? I said, I'm here for you. She's like, Tim, these people are dangerous. Don't mess around. And the guy came up to the car and threatened to shoot me and kill me. And I said, she's a heroin addict. I'm leaving with her. And I did. And I stopped by Portillo's, which is an Italian beef and hot dog joint, and got her some food, and I took her to my office. You're going to get me emotional with this. And I'll never forget Becky calling her mom and saying, Mom, I'm safe. I'm with Tim. I love you. I want to get help. So I put her into a detox, and then I was sending her to a long-term program, a year-long program in South Carolina. And her mom said, I'm going to drive her. So my nonprofit, I gave her mom $2,000. Her and her daughter had never been on a vacation in their life. And I said, I want you to take 10 days, drive into South Carolina, and I want you to stop in every state. I want you guys to go tour and see. And they did that. And Becky went there, and today Becky lives in Chicago. She's a substance abuse counselor. She's married. She has one child, and she's pregnant with another child. Becky is my biggest success story ever. And we still keep in touch. And I bet this girl was going to die and not make it. And yeah, if someone that's been sex trafficked since they were 12 years old can turn their life around, anybody can do it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, well, you got me thinking about that girl. Yeah. Becky's probably my biggest success story.
Yes. 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 That's wonderful. That's wonderful to see the change, the transformation, and
Yeah.
it's truly, truly, truly inspiring.
Thank you.
What role does faith, spirituality, or a belief system play in the recovery process in your view?
God is everything or God is nothing. So that's a convoluted question, because if you look in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a chapter called We Agnostics. God to me could be a group of drunks, a gift of desperation, but there's a difference in my eyes between religion and spirituality. I don't need to go to, and I'm not knocking church at all. I was raised Catholic, which to me I was afraid of God. It was a punishing God, because I'd go to confession and I broke out Mrs. Mary's house windows. Okay, go do 5 Our Fathers and 5 Hail Marys. Okay, cool. Pardon me, I do my prayers, but if you do something wrong, you're going to rot in hell. You're going to go to purgatory. I'm like, hold on. So I had a punishing God. But once I got sober, I was taught that I can make a God of my own. Today, I'm more of what's the old analogy? Religion's for people that are afraid to go to hell. Spirituality's for people that have walked through hell. And believe me, I lived with the hounds of hell. I lived with the bottom feeders of society for a long time. And I live a spiritual life today. Meditation, transcendental meditation is key to me. I believe in a God. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in a higher power, but you don't need to. I got a buddy in North Carolina, Chris D. He's 38 years sober. He doesn't believe in God whatsoever. And I send my people I hear about that have a God issue, will go here, talk to Chris. He'll take you through the steps. God's a bottle of water. It can be whatever you want, but I see God through nature, through my animals, through my friends, through God's inside of us. That's what people got screwed up. God is in you. Jesus Christ is inside of you, and we're energy and frequencies and water, and it's all right there. But you got to sit back, and I do a lot of reading, and I've studied different religions and karmic healing and cosmic energies, and I'll take whatever tools I can. And for me to say this isn't for you, and hey, Hazelton Treatment Center, Minnesota, one of the top treatment centers in the country, was opened in 1958. Do you know why they opened? To sober up alcoholic priests. So why did they have to open a treatment center for priests? If they're priests, they just can pray to God and get fine. Because some people need to be taken out. They need to get detox. They need to get clarity. And a lot of people are mad at God. I was molested at 10 years old by a female babysitter. Could I have blamed God for that? Sure, I could have. And what happens is when people get sober, then their thoughts and patterns on God's, I hate God. This happened to me. God doesn't give kids cancer. God doesn't burn someone in a house fire. God is there to help you get through those good times and those bad times. It's called life. Life happens. My brother was just diagnosed with leukemia on Wednesday, and we're all freaking out and all this. Well, he got his oncology appointment yesterday, and he's got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He doesn't need chemo. He doesn't need radiation, and he'll be fine. All right, cool. But he's got some things he needs to adjust. But God's everywhere. But to me, God is everything or God is nothing, because somebody was carrying me for those 28 years, 30 years of my active addiction. If you look at the old analogy, the footprints in the sand where there's one set of footprint, well, God was carrying me, So God's everything or nothing in my book.
Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. That was wonderful. And so I have another question. At the end of the day, what legacy do you hope your work leaves behind?
I just want to give people hope. I just want people to know that things can get better, and they will get better. And sometimes you got to trust in other people and not yourself, because my best thinking put me in the situations I got to, and I wasn't a trusting person. And today I have men that I have met for 5 months that I would trust with my wife, with my bank accounts, with everything, and my children, because they're sober and they're men in recovery or women in recovery. And I just want people to know that Tim Ryan might have been a chaos agent, but he helped a lot of people and he brought a lot of hope. That's all I want to do, and let people know if I can turn my life around, you can. And if you need help, friggin' call me. I'll guide and direct you. That's it.
But if you could get one message across to every addict out there who feels hopeless right now, what would you say to them?
Damn it, put your hand up and ask for help. If you got a heartbeat, you got hope. End of discussion. If your heart's beating, there's hope for you. And all you got to do is put your hand up and tell on yourself, I'm struggling. I need help. And even if it's not with drugs and alcohol, it's with mental health. You're thinking of hurting yourself, whatever. The world's a much better place with you in it than without you in it. And, that's my analogy. I can take anyone from dope to hope, helping one person at a time. You got a heartbeat, you got hope. Bam, there we go.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If you have a heartbeat, you still have hope. And that's it for today for this episode of Behind the Spotlight. We thank you again, Tim Ryan. You are truly an inspiration. Your work is really, really impacting the world and lives. And we just want to honor you for that and say thank you, thank you, thank you for your service.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate you taking the time today to share with me, to bring me on your show. And if there's anything I can do for you or any of your friends, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.